Good afternoon. I'm Rev Dave Thompson. I'd love to welcome you back to our Civil Human Bible Studies. I'm a civil human minister, so what that means is that I focus my ministry on building human peace and common ground. I'm so excited to have you back. We're talking in the book of Matthew. My intent with this study is to look at the scriptures from my heritage to try to find those teachings that I feel are applicable across the board to all humans in a civil way. So regardless of our specific faiths, regardless of how we want to vote in our politics, and regardless of how we want to live our lifestyles. So the teachings that can be applied across the board while respecting those things. Let's go ahead and jump into the passage. We're in Matthew chapter 18, verses 10 through 14. Starting in verse 10. Take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I say to you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. For the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray, does he not leave the 99 and go to the mountains to seek the one that is straying? And if he should find it, assuredly I say to you, he rejoices more over that sheep than over the 99 that did not go away. Even so, it is not the will of your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. I love this particular story. I call them parables as well. It's basically just a story thrown out there to help us conceptualize a principle or a virtue that Jesus is talking about here. The reason for my excitement on this particular passage is that I worked on a sheep ranch when I was a kid. My brother and I, in the summers, we lived in a small town, Myrtle Point, Oregon, and in the summers, we had some good friends who owned a sheep ranch, and we would go over there and help basically take care of the sheep, to do the shearing, to do the medications, to move them from pasture to pasture, and to stay on the ranch. And it was a completely different lifestyle than even in the town that we were living in, which was a small town. You know, it meant rising up at 4:30 in the morning to eat a huge, awesome breakfast, but then to go and start working all day long until the afternoon, which of course we would all go down to, there was a river going through their property, and we'd all go down and basically take a nice swim in the swimming hole there. And then we'd come back, maybe take a nap, but then we would eat and go back to our whatever it is that we needed to do. And on our ranch, there really is never a time where there's nothing to do, either fixing fences or taking care of something or another, fixing equipment. There's always something to do. So I love this particular analogy that Jesus portrays. And in particular, the reality of Jesus's focus on this particular thing, leaving 99 sheep to go after one sheep. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with how sheep work and what they are like as an animal, generally they stick together as a herd and they'll move as a herd. You get these crazy sheep sometimes who decide to lead the pack, and if they go full bore, all of the sheep are going to go with them. It doesn't even matter if it's over a cliff, wherever it is, they will go at it. I was wrangling them in through, we were shearing, and I was trying to move a herd up the chute so that we could start processing their wool. And one of these sheep, for whatever reason, got this dead-eye look at me, and I knew he was going to be coming for me. And so he just started hightailing it directly at me, and all of the sheep in the corral started running directly at me. And so I just jumped up on the fence and barely escaped with my life, because sheep can be ferocious in their own right. In this particular story, Jesus is trying to highlight a really very important virtue of what it is in the kingdom of heaven, in this society of the heavens or the universe, the way that we're supposed to live. what it looks like and how we should deal with those people who end up going astray or wandering off. Because at times we would have sheep that would wander off from the herd and they just are going about their business. And it's those times when we were most worried, because those sheep would be preyed upon by predators and get into all kinds of mischief because there wasn't the protection of the herd or the shepherd. A lot of times we regrettably were looking in the sky for, circling birds would tell us, well, there's probably a sheep that's gone off or something that we need to go pay attention to. And that was always difficult to see. I'm not a huge fan of cruelty to animals, even if it's from another predator. It's not wonderful to see, but it is part of the reality of this world. So what is Jesus talking about here? He's bringing something to the people's attention, saying to the disciples, what do you think? Which is like a setup for them that he's going to say, I'm going to give you an analogy. You draw the conclusion that you want to, but here it is. He goes to a sheep analogy. And why is that? Because sheep were everywhere in Israel. They were everywhere. There were hundreds of thousands of sheep everywhere because they were a valuable and vital resource for the community and for the nation. They created wool for clothing and leather for clothing. They created milk and cheese. They created meat. They were a big part of the sacrificial system in the rituals of the temples. And they created fat. And there's actually, in these particular sheep in that area, they're called fat tail sheep. And in the tail, like camels who hold on to water in their hump, sheep would hold on to nutrients stored in fat inside their tail. So the tail actually became quite a commodity back then. And it was used to fry things because it had a lot of fat in it. It could be reduced and extracted for a number of purposes. So needless to say, sheep were incredibly valuable to the people back then. And so we have this situation where the shepherd is tending to a flock and notices that one of them, he has 100 of them, it's just simpler math that way, one of them ends up wandering off. And we get a picture of this shepherd who is concerned for this one sheep, in so much as he goes to the sheep, leaves the 99 sitting there. And when it says leave here, it means actually leaving them on their own. It's not like he passed them on to another shepherd or put them in a corral. He left the herd that was safe and easy and went after the sheep. And even though that oftentimes meant that he was going to have to face predators or other dangers involved in that, and possibly even getting lost himself, he knew he had to do that because that sheep is precious to him. And so he goes and he seeks after it. And the one thing I love about the Greek words here, they're really actually specific and provide a lot of color to what's being said here. The first one is the word go. He goes off to the sheep. And this word has a sense of feeling, of taking a journey to wherever they are with a personal attachment to the destination. It's just the inference of this particular word that's used in the Greek. The second one is seek. He goes seeking after this lost sheep who's wandered away. And this idea is to seek until there's a binding resolution, that there is a positive or a negative. It means going on this journey until there is a conclusion, whether that means that the sheep has passed away or whether that means that the shepherd is bringing the sheep back to the 99. Regardless, it's a matter of commitment and sheer will to take care of this one sheep. And then he finds the sheep, right? He's excited, he's rejoicing, brings him back to the 99 sheep, and he draws this conclusion then at the end that the heavenly creator, the creator where we came from in the heavens, for those of us who maybe come from a religious background or spiritual background, that's God or whatever you decide to call it. And for those who don't, for atheists, we just call it the universe that created us. And so whatever it is, there is a value placed upon even one person in this analogy. Well, sheep in the analogy, but it means for one person. I'd like to talk about a few of those things. one of the main things that I'd like to point out is all of us, every single one of us, know of a person who has wandered off. I know individuals in my life who have decided to go and make choices in their lives that are leading them to bad consequences. The idea of wandering off here in this analogy that Jesus is sharing is this idea of leaving the good, leaving happiness, and going into a place that is dangerous, and it provides destruction in the end. And so the whole warning here is pay attention to those people, Jesus is saying, to those people who are wandered off. And then in the whole go and seek, you remember we talked about those words, that we should go and seek this person out. So it means that we have to make a decision to make a vital effort to go to where that person is and to seek them out, whether it's a bad story or a good story, whether that person wants to come back or not. We leave the 99, we leave the comfort and knowledge of what's safe in our world. It's easy for us to stick in our own little bubble because we know it, we know what to expect, nobody questions us, we have a sense of identity and participation that's not up in the air. But when we leave, we introduce ourselves to destruction as well. We introduce ourselves to risk. And so when we go after these people, the whole inference in this analogy is that we are going to where they are. We're not calling them, and I'll use this as an example. Many of us who come from a particular religious or churchy background, for those of us who came from Christianity, it's fairly common for people to assume that people who are wayward will come to the church in order to fix their lives. And that really is the antithesis of what's being said here. The point of it is, and it's not saying that any particular church has the corner on the market of goodness and happiness, but the idea is that we leave our comfort to go all the way to where they are, wherever that is, the danger it poses, the uncertainty that it is, the skepticism that other people may place upon us because they think we're going off to wander as well. All of that is set aside and we go to them. If that means that they are drunk at a bar and it means that we go to them and pick them up and drive them home so that they don't drive intoxicated, if it means going to, in an extreme case, but unfortunately very true, individuals who use prostitution in order to pay their bills or in a place where they don't have a choice in that matter, to go to them and to bring them back, to bring them out of that place, which means going to the corner where they're standing on, bringing them home. It's this idea of participating in the reality of people's circumstances and being a part of that, not sitting back in our comfort and in our accepted culture and telling people that they're wrong. It's going to them and bringing them back. I also, in closing, just want to leave this one point. There are a number of people who seem to enjoy ridiculing people who have gone astray. And hear the astray, just to clarify, this is according to Jesus' virtues. So in other words, they are no longer being compassionate, the person who goes astray. They're no longer being humble. They're no longer being merciful. They're no longer seeking peace, but they're doing things that are going to create a bad circumstance for their lives and a bad conclusion. And instead of ridiculing these people from a distance in our comfort, like many are doing in our religious communities today, we must go to where they are and meet them where they're at, to talk with them, to understand their problem, to understand what's happening to them, and to provide an acceptance and a work to bring them back to a place where they can live a life that is going to provide beneficial outcomes. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this Bible study. It's been an interesting venture for me to look at my own heritage and to try to find teachings specifically that are applicable to everybody. The ideas of compassion and mercy and long-suffering and forgiveness and peacemaking, these are universal truths that any psychologist, let alone every person of any spirituality, recognizes and knows to be a truth. And so I encourage you to take some time today maybe and think about those people who might need your help, who may need you to just go and help them in whatever way you can. Yeah, you may not be able to solve all their problems, obviously, but you can lend a hand and you can give them a sense of hope and of love and of welcoming and acceptance that can help set them back in a good course. Thank you for joining me today. If you have any comments or reflections, I would love it if you would leave those in the show notes and in the comments below. And please like my Facebook page. If you're on YouTube, there's a button right down here that you can click so that you can subscribe to the channel and we can stay connected. And until tomorrow when we meet again, live at noon, I want to make sure that you know that I love you. And I hope you choose to love yourself. It's the only love that we have any choice over and any control. And now, I ask that you would join me as we go about the rest of our day, loving our neighbors the same way. Thank you.